Hello, my loves. Today we're going to look at some more Reddit stories, and if you've enjoyed a Reddit story, why don't you consider hitting the subscribe button? Maybe that's the notification bell too, and let's start with today's story. I feel like I'm losing my mind here, and my parents are draining me. So I'm a 17F, about to graduate, so it's a given that my parents are a little on edge, not a little. No, they've thrown themselves off and hit every paranoia tree on the way down. So a little background, my parents are Hispanic, Puerto Rico, so therefore I am. They are also heavily Catholic, so therefore I am not. I am diagnosed with ASD and ADHD, both attention and hyperactivity, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm about to graduate and that has made me take a step back and look at my life. I'm going to preface this by saying, my parents are not bad people, and I have been lucky enough to enjoy a nice comfortable life. They are flawed and I love them, but I don't think their rules are a good fit for me or my mental health. Anyway, I'm going to be 18 soon, and after I graduate I plan to head off to college. So something my parents are starting to do is trying to make me become more independent, which is not a bad thing in itself. The problem lies in their approach to this. I am the only girl in my family aside from my mother, so in a traditionally Hispanic Catholic household, I was the precious flower in need of protecting. I was never allowed to do anything. I couldn't go outside to play by myself. We lived on a military base, probably one of the safest places. I wasn't allowed to get dirty or sit with my legs up, because I was a lady. These were just the small things. My father used to say to me, seen, not heard. He said this to all of us, my two brothers, one younger, one older. But to me he usually accompanied that with this phrase, ladies must not be loud. I didn't cut my hair because my mom thought I looked better with long hair and dresses. I couldn't wear shorts, except under my dress, and around this time, I was being severely bullied by my classmates. They would pull my hair, put glue in it, touch it without asking, drop books on my head, trip me, tear up my papers, etc. And when I told my parents a month later, they got upset at me for not telling them earlier, and how it was my fault that it continued because I didn't fight back. I was 12 years old, so their solution was to tell me that every boy wanted to defile me, and how every girl was jealous and wished they could be me. So what happened? I started to feel that my self-worth was tied to my looks and virginity. I couldn't make regular friends, and the ones I did make I couldn't hang out after school. Again, military base West Point if you're interested. Super small. My friend lived down the road from me, because my parents didn't trust them and didn't think I could make good friends. And every time we went out, and still to this day, my mother will make comments on my clothing, about how much it's showing. And when I was young and on the playground I was always scolded because older men were looking up my dress, and I was running around and acting childish. Still 12 here, my parents were sexualizing my body before I even had an idea about what the fuck that meant. When I started wearing bras, my parents would get upset if we were on a trip and my brothers complained that I wasn't wearing one. Not at me, but that my brothers and I were fighting. Huh? How was that my fault? But in the moment and the moments after that I felt bad that I was going through puberty. It all came to a head when I was 13, and I was essayed by the girl I called my best friend. And I broke. For as long as I can remember, my self-worth came from my purity and my innocence, and that had been taken from me by the person I called my best friend. I had been bullied before, but now it felt worse. I started to notice that boys were commenting on my body. People would grope me in gym. I forgot a bra for gym one day, and a girl took me aside and scolded me for tempting the boys, all the while behind closed doors. My body was being taken from me without my consent. And once she cut me off from all my support systems. She told me she hated me and abandoned me. I had been so focused on what boys may do, nobody even seemed to look at what a girl may do. This is when I started trying to find myself. I realized I was bisexual, and this is when I started to argue with my parents more about going to church. How could I go to a place where everything told me I was a broken, damaged good, and what I wanted and what I felt didn't matter? I still respected their views and religion. I only wish they gave me that same respect. I didn't believe in God anymore, because how could I believe in a being who is said to be loving and kind, when what happened to me was one of the most heinous things that could happen to a person? I begged and begged for anyone to come save me. I prayed and prayed, but nobody did. I can't believe in the idea of what God is, when he lets so many things happen, free will be damned. I've tried to tell my parents that I don't want to go to Mass because of my beliefs and what they've said about people like me, and my mother just says while you live on my house, it is my job to teach you about the Lord. But I'm not forcing you to go, but if you choose not to go, you will bear the consequences when I get home. So I go, because I really have no other choice. My parents are the type to punish me until they've decided on a punishment. I can feel people stare at me. I've caught older men starring up my dress. I feel uncomfortable in my own skin and violated. But do my parents listen? No, because by setting my boundaries, I'm disrespecting them. I told them recently what happened to me, and first thing my mom said was, "Why didn't you tell me?" My mom is a therapist BTW, has her doctorate in marriage and family therapy. I would have thought that of all people my mother would understand why I couldn't say anything. While I was being SA in my own home, the person told me, she said, "No one cares about you, you're alone, look here we are in your house and nobody is here to help." And when nobody did come, that cemented that thought process in my head. I finally gained the confidence to tell my mother and father, and my parents asked me if I could try to call her or her mom to try and sort things out. I waited until we moved out of the state to say something. Why the FECK would I want to call them? My father was upset that I didn't fight back, that I didn't say anything, and that he raised me better than this. This is the reaction they always have when I tell them something like this. Why didn't I do it sooner? My father has diagnosed PTSD and was abused by his mother. Does he like to talk about it? No. Did he tell anyone during the time it was happening? No. And what he said to me broke the sliver of trust one had in my parents. He told me, after I had just told him how I was violated by the person I called my best friend, "I don't get why you lied to me, I have trauma, and some of it, Munica, which means doll, how fitting, probably is worse than yours." What the fuck? He does have trauma and that is valid, but no trauma is worse than another. Why don't I trust them? Why don't I tell them about when I'm groped, dehumanized, and violated? Because every time I do, they make it about them, how I hurt them, how I lied to them. And somehow I'm always at fault. I gave them my trust and respect, and every time I try to set boundaries or share something with them, they spit in my face. Literally, my father spits a lot when he scolds me, and he has the habit of getting in my face, so when I tell him he's spitting on me, I'm being disrespectful for interrupting him and talking back. They've told me that spitting in someone's face is one of the most disrespectful things you could do. And all they've shown me is that I'm not allowed to be my own person, that I don't own my own body. They've told me this. Am I over what happened to me? Fuck no, I still have trouble coming to terms with it. I keep thinking, what if I overreacted? What if I just imagined it? What if it's my fault? I have to work through it, but I won't be doing that with the people who throw my trust back in my face, this time covered in shit. I know they love me and I in turn, but that doesn't give them the right to do whatever they want because they're my parents. Because we're Hispanic, there is a hierarchy. Basically anyone who's older than you is better and worth more as a person, and you have to bend over backwards for whatever they want. If you don't, you're disrespecting not only them, but the people who raised me too. That is how it will be for the rest of my life. When my parents get older, it's expected that I take care of them full time, as well as financially support them. The only way I will be higher than someone in the hierarchy is if I or my brothers have children. I am never going to treat my potential offspring like I was. Nobody deserves to feel like they mean less than the rest of their family just because they're young. Nobody should not have the right to privacy or setting boundaries. My parents can set boundaries, but I can't because they're my parents, and the rules don't apply to them. It's giving Nixon vibes. They have parental controls on my phone, drawing tablet, and TV. Family Link, the app for 12-year-olds. I'm 17, they go through my journal, they go through my history, they are angry they don't have biometrics on my phone, they get upset at my password because they can't remember it. I've given it to them. I changed it to a pattern to make it easier for them. They go through my room, trash, drawings, etc. They've removed my door, because I closed it, not locked it, closed it. I'm not allowed to lock my room. They don't trust me enough to chat with my friends on Discord. Some of them don't have a phone. because I'm too naive, whatever the fuck that means. I can't spend my own money and get in trouble if I use it to buy food. I can't go out with friends if my parents don't like them. They don't like a lot of them. They go through my sketchbook, and if they don't like what I drew, they ask me to shred it. If I refuse, they shred it themselves. It's usually just characters from a horror game, or supernatural characters, i.e., Wendigos, zombies, giraffes. I don't draw furry porn like they think. That shit is nasty. They say it's too graphic and mature for me, the person who drew them. So I draw digitally, and don't draw anything I like to draw. It's gotten to the point that when they threaten me with my phone, electronics, or whatever I've been hyper-fixating on, I don't care. I don't become emotionally attached to anything because I know that it is at risk of being destroyed. Strict parents can teach you a lot, like how to recognize who's walking by the sound of their feet, or how to fake being asleep, well enough to trick to military veterans. I have done this. Or my personal favorite, how to find a loophole in parental controls. Like just getting a second browser app and connecting it to a new email, then put parental controls on that email that you control from your drawing tablet, so they can't get control of that browser. Or how to remotely control the family computer and put porn in your parents' personal user history so they get upset at it and try to clear it, resetting their settings in their process, without having to touch it and leave no trail. I don't watch porn, but I do sometimes like to screw with them, then they wonder how it got there. And if you get caught, just do the same thing a little differently. Strict parents aren't teaching their kids to be better than others, they're teaching them how to get better at hiding and finding loopholes. And then your kids don't trust you and you lose your relationship when they turn 18. It is my life. I'm not going to give it up just so I can cater and nanny to my parents' every whim. Don't get me wrong, if they need it I'll take care of them, but I'm not going to do it because I have to, and it's my obligation as their child to return the favor of them raising me. If I do, it will be because I want to, and I love them. That may sound cold and heartless, but I didn't choose to be born, they choose to have me. And when they did that, it is their obligation to raise the child they brought into the world. If they didn't want me, they shouldn't have had me. Get an abortion or put me up for adoption. But I'm not going to sacrifice my life just because they got a participation award for parenting. I love my parents, and I know deep down that they don't know what they do is hurtful. No matter how hard I try, I can't explain my feelings and how my experiences affected me, to people who didn't grow up with it, to people who don't want to understand because it challenges their worldview. There is a lot more, but this has gone on for way too long, and I don't think many people will read this whole thing. Story, entitled Mother Scolds Me for Pushing Her Daughter Away. This story happened to me when I was about 10 years old. My family and I were at an amusement park, which we always visit for a day every year. We had a lot of fun with all the different attractions. The park also had smaller attractions for children that used park coins. I was always a very patient person and always avoided conflicts because I am also very sensitive. As a child, politeness and respect were always the most important thing to me, whether child or adult. I always got on better with older people than children my age. In any case, there was a pirate attraction with 2 ships where several children could shoot cannons loaded with foam balls at each other. It was in a closed room and the parents could watch from outside through a grate. These cannons, however, required special coins to work. I had always been a pirate fan and was keen to try it out. We were never a rich family, and so I was taught how important saving is. These coins only cost €1 or so, but I didn't want to waste money. So I only got 3 coins and went into this attraction. I put a coin in the cannon and started playing with other children. Me alone against 4 other children. They bombarded me with the other cannons and I defended myself as best I could, which wasn't really a problem. But one of the children was a little girl aged 6 to 8 who made it fun to manipulate me and pushed me and the cannon away so that I couldn't aim and couldn't really play. I asked several times not to push me, but the girl just didn't listen to me. Since she knew that the cannon had a timer, I felt harassed because I was alone against 4 children. The timer was almost at the end and it was also my second coin. The girl continued to pull and push me, after several requests. I didn't want to use any more coins and wanted to take advantage of the time, so I grabbed the girl by the arm and looked her straight in the face and told her to stop. She burst into tears and ran out of the room. I was able to use the time again and play again. After a few minutes, a woman shouted at me. At first, I didn't notice her because I was too deep in my defense. When I realized that she was shouting at me, I politely asked what the problem was. The woman replied, "You hit and insulted my daughter." I was taken aback and said calmly that I didn't hit her and tried to explain my point of view to her. She didn't let me get a word in edgewise and shouted at me while the girl on her leg grinned maliciously. She said I should apologize immediately and leave her daughter alone and let her do what she wanted. She apparently thought I was a violent child. During the discussion, a sound was heard which signaled that the timer of the cannon had run out. Emotionally charged and feeling attacked from all sides, I left the room and in disappointment how people cannot respect each other. I then found my family and told them what had happened to me because I was already crying because I was being insulted for something I didn't do. Afterwards, I went to another attraction with my sister to distract myself for a moment. My father, a person with little patience, saw the mother and confronted her. I didn't notice and came back and saw my father and the daughter's mother having a heated argument. My mother didn't want to attract attention and asked my father to be quieter. The mother saw me as a liar and a bully and insulted me. A little later, the father came and we explained the situation. He was a very reasonable gentleman and apparently knew immediately who the liar was and scolded his wife and daughter. He apologized and took mother and daughter to the exit of the amusement park. My mother was pretty embarrassed about this incident because we got so much attention and was angry with my father for reacting like that. I apologized for the situation getting out of hand. We tried to enjoy the day and I tried to lighten the mood, but it was in vain. Everyone in the family was pissed off for the day and we left the park to go home. I thought it was a shame that we lost our mood and fun just because of an argument. But the next year we went back and had a great time. I tried not to mention this story again until a few years later. But I will not forget this experience. Story: I'm an adult. I don't have to put up with this shit. My good 26-year-old parents were teen parents and broke up when I was a few months old. They had a nasty custody battle and my childhood was high conflict because of their behavior. My mom died when I was 23. As I said before, things were very high conflict in my childhood and my stepmom at many times was the heart of that conflict. My stepmom was a huge source of conflict because of how evil she was growing up. I lived with my dad primarily growing up, so she was always around. My dad and I had a falling out but made up when I was 23, a few months after my mom died in a car accident. I forgave him for a lot of neglectful behavior and how he let his wife treat me growing up. This made my paternal grandma very happy. Fast forward to this last year, during Christmas time. I actually hung out with my stepmom and went shopping for presents for everyone. We had a great time. We went to lunch and things turned sour. She asked me, "Do you know why your dad and I never built a house? Did he ever tell you?" I said no. She then goes, "Well, we were forced to sell the piece of land and just buy a house instead. We weren't going to be able to afford it because of all your court fees." She's referring to the custody case that started when I was 5 years old. This statement really took me aback. I didn't say much. Later that evening I called my paternal grandma and asked her, why didn't my dad build a house? My grandma told me it was because my stepmom wanted too extravagant of a house, and they wouldn't be able to afford it. I told her what my stepmom had said about the court fees. My grandma was furious because she said that she had given my dad a large portion of the money for the legal fees. I decided to just let the situation go and not mention it to my dad, because I knew my grandma was at the end stages of liver failure and didn't have much time left with us. She was really happy my dad and I were getting along. My grandma passed away this April. Well, now it is July and my dad's cousin has now told me all of the BS my stepmom says about me and how she brags about how she treated me growing up. She had a separate fridge just for me because she didn't want me contaminating her son's food. That was one of the things she bragged about among tons of other things. According to this cousin, my dad wasn't there when these things were said, but he was made aware and didn't do much. Well, I have just fucking had it. I've forgiven him for all the shit he's done. I've sat on the whole we didn't build a house because of your court fees BS, and now this? I am 26 years old with my own kids and I don't need to put up with this shit anymore. I have put up with too much hurt from my dad and I don't feel as if I need to continue letting this kind of treatment in my life anymore, especially since my grandma is gone now. It is just very difficult because my mom is dead. She's gone. He's all I have left, even if he's not much. I am just so sick and tired of the hurt and disrespect. If I am being honest, he does not bring much value to my life. My kids somewhat know them, but aren't super attached, like a traditional grandparent-grandchild relationship. How do I approach a serious talk with him? Do I cut contact? If I do, how do I do it? Please give me ideas of full sentences to say. I am lost how to approach this from a place of logic and not emotions. Story, is this wrong? Hello, 19-year-old, and love my parents. They have done a lot for me and paid for a lot of my stuff including college tuition, so I would rather be on their good side. However, we have very differing political views, both of them being right-wing and I'm center-left. My dad would always complain about the left villainizing the right when he does the exact same thing to the left. I usually point out the hypocrisy in that civilly, but he just tries to insult me by saying you're a dumb 19-year-old that doesn't know any better. I'm a 55-year-old man and I know this *T more, and it honestly pisses me off a bit, but I try to brush it off. It's honestly gotten really bad lately though, especially after the attempted assassination at Trump's rally. My mom and dad fully believes it was the Central Intelligence Agency attempting to assassinate him and I pointed out why that idea seemed ridiculous. The Central Intelligence Agency would absolutely ensure he was dead anyways. There would be probably more than one shooter in that case, yada yada yada, but my dad would pull the same stuff and say I don't want to listen to you. I kept trying to get through his head in a calm manner, but he threatened he wouldn't pay for my tuition if I kept going in. I had to shut up at that point. This is far from the first time they tried threatening me related to financial means whenever politics are brought into the mix, so I'm just trying to shut up about it, but I get so uncomfortable constantly blabbering about it and I have to sit there in silence. This is sort of unrelated, but a year back I was sort of in hot water with my parents for a bit. I won't go into detail, but I will say I was in the complete wrong in the situation, so I take fault and I understand why they were upset at that moment. We had arguments about it, but at one point they did tell me they never had any respect for me in the first place, because I'm their child, and that they would continue to see me that way until I was completely independent and making good money, according to them. In another argument I tried to communicate on why something they did was upsetting. For context, they made a comment on how trashy my friend was and I got mad over those obscene comments because she struggled most of her life and I was trying to help her, and that I would like them to be more understanding. Instead they both completely brushed me off and said that since I'm their child and they're my parents they can say and make me do whatever whether I like it or not, and it feels so gross. When I try to object to this they threatened with the same stuff about not paying tuition. In that moment I feel like I'm just more of a piece of property to them rather than an actual person with thoughts and opinions. I never saw my parents the same way after those conversations and honestly made me lose respect in my parents too. This is far from the last time both parents have threatened not to pay tuition to me as a way for me to back down, and I'm realizing just recently how screwed up that is and what to really do about it. I don't want to exaggerate and say this is abuse because there are kids out there who are far worse off with their parents than I currently am, but I still feel like this is still kind of manipulative. I know I'm really fortunate my parents are even paying my tuition at all, but at the same time I feel like this is leverage for them to make me completely compliant to them. I don't want to cut them out because they're covering my stuff and I want to desperately believe they are good people, but this feels so manipulative and I don't know if I should let that behavior continue. I'm just wondering what I should do in this situation, or if this is just normal and I just have to get used to it. I've slowly been growing distant from them because I really can't stand being around them more than ever. Story entitled Parent Tries to Drag Me Out of the Park. So this happened a few days ago, and I thought that some of you here might enjoy it. Some important background information is that even though I'm 16, I look like a 12-year-old girl. It's like I stopped aging after middle school, so encounters like this one aren't uncommon, but this is the worst one so far. So Thursday, I went to the park alone just to sit at a beach, enjoy nature, read a book, scroll on my phone, etc. So there I was when I noticed this lady next to the playground watching me. She kept looking at me, and after 10 minutes she started to walk towards me. I let out a sigh and prepared myself because I already had an idea of where this was going. The lady comes up to me and says, "AP, excuse me young lady, but where are your parents? Are they here?" Me, "No, they're not here, they're EP. Don't you think it's dangerous for a girl your age to be alone?" Me, "No, not really." The EP now sounding a little annoyed, "A girl like you shouldn't be left unattended. Where are your parents? I want to talk to them." Me, "Ma'am, I appreciate your concern, but I'm 16 and I am very capable of taking care of myself." I must guess I picked the wrong chat option because after I said that she got super mad. EP, "Don't lie to me, young lady." Me, "I'm not lying, EP, I'm not stupid. I know what a 16-year-old looks like." Me, "Look, here's my driver's license." I pull out my wallet and show her my driver's license. She glances at it and scoffs. EP, "Please, I know a fake license when I see one. My 10-year-old could do a better job making one." Me, "What? No, it's not fake. Can you just leave me alone?" AP, "If it's not fake, then you'll have no problem showing it to those officers over there." She points to a police car that's parked on the side of the road. And before I can say anything, she reaches down and grabs my wrist, really hard too, pulls me off the bench, and starts pulling me to the cop car. Me, "Let me go, you're hurting me." As we got close to the car, an officer came out and came up to us. "Officer, is there a problem, ma'am?" EP, "Yes, there is." The EP pulled me in front of her. "Tell the man what you did." Me, "Jack Shastras T, that's what I did." "Now let go of me, officer." "Ma'am, is this your daughter?" Me, "No, she's not my mom, she's just some random lady." "Officer, ma'am, please let go of the child." The woman then let go of my wrist. EP, "She's lying about her age and she has a fake driver's license." "Officer, do you have a fake ID, miss?" Me, "No." "Officer, may I see it?" Me, "Yes." I pull out my driver's license and hand it to him. "Officer, how old are you?" Me, 16. The officer looked me up and down before checking my driver's license. "Officer, ma'am, this is a valid driver's license." EP, "What? No, it can't be. She doesn't look 16, she's too young." "Officer, the ID is valid and it says she's 16, and it's not a crime to look young. However, it is a crime to drag someone across the street." "Miss, do you want to press charges for assault?" EP, "Wait, what?" Me, "No, I just want to go back to my day." "Officer, very well, EP, but wait." She, "Officer, ma'am, if I were you, I'd stop talking. I'd also apologize to this young lady and thank her because she just saved you from a lot of trouble." The EP gave a half-hearted apology and ran off. The officer then made sure I was all right, apologized for her, and handed back my driver's license. After that, I grabbed my stuff and went back home. So that was my most recent experience with a crazy person. Story, I can't forgive my dad. My sister and I went to the cinemas with our friend and we bought snacks to share. I bought candy and chocolate biscuits. When we got home, she hogged the chips she bought and also took the chocolate biscuits that I bought. I was so tired that I just went to sleep and told her not to finish the biscuits. The next day, I grabbed the chocolate from her and put it on my bed because it was mine. She snatched it back from me while I was gone, so I came and took it back. She chased me out and made a whole fuss, screaming and everything. My dad came and asked who the chocolate was for, and I said it was mine and that I bought it. She kept going, so my dad grabbed me, and I was yelling. He held me down and told her to grab it. I fought out and was about to give her some when she said something to upset me. I was like, "F you, I ain't giving you any." Then she hit me, and we started fighting. I got extremely mad because my dad was holding me while she was hitting me. I was getting hit by both her and him. Then she went to get a knife, and I ran and jumped on her. My dad separated us and was so mad. He grabbed me and I was sitting on the couch when he just started hitting me so hard, punching and kicking me, yelling and going absolutely mental. He wasn't himself. He usually hits, but never this bad. He was acting like I was a grown man his size. He left the house and came back, then ran at me trying to hit me again. I begged him to leave, and he just smashed up my chocolate. I was in so much pain and went outside, having a panic attack. I called my mom and told her everything. She said I should have given the chocolate and that he was obviously wrong. She told me to go to her room and lock myself in. A couple of hours passed and he came back, buying me new chocolate as an apology, but I chucked it. He also sent me $20, but I sent it back. A week went by, and I ignored him. He was mad at me and tried to make me feel guilty. Today, he apologized because my mom forced him to, and he is giving me $150. I told him I forgave him, and he said sorry, hugged me and all. But I just can't feel myself forgiving him. The way he hit me, like I wasn't his daughter. It was like he was fighting me. My jaw hurts so bad I have to chew slowly, and the way he kicked me while I was crying and begging him to stop, he kept hitting me with so much force. It wasn't even my fault. He didn't hit my sister, he was being so nice to her. He gave her money but was shit-talking me out loud the whole week, putting all my siblings against me. He would cuss me out and say a whole bunch of rude things when I walked past, literally bullying me. I feel bad because I know he feels guilty, and I'm taking his money, but I just feel so angry. The fact that my family jokes about it as if it wasn't so traumatizing. I thought he was going to kill me because he has crazy anger issues and can't control himself. He takes meds for it and even said himself that he couldn't control himself. But it fills me with rage how he could do that to me and then be like, if you act up, that's going to happen to you next, to my siblings. I know he is my father and has done everything for me and sacrificed a lot for me and my siblings, but I just can't forgive him. By the way, I turned 16 and am a girl, and my sister is 17 turning 18, and my dad is big and super strong and taller than me, and he is fat and strong. Story, entitled Mom Hates Me. So for some context, I, a 24-year-old, moved into an apartment complex a couple of months ago. There are 4 in total apartments in the building. Mine, and my immediate neighbor who lives right across from me. As far as I know, it's a mother and her son, and we live on the bottom floor. Though there are a couple of stairs up to where we live, there are no apartments under us. Above us, however, there are 2 more apartments. An older gentleman and a mother and her son and daughter. The building also locks after 4 p.m., meaning you can't get into the apartment without a key. Now, this woman has had an issue with me since I moved in, though frankly I never knew why. She's just always thrown glares my way whenever we pass by in the stairs. Our first interaction happened about a month of me moving in. I stepped out of my apartment to walk my dog, Lilo. Now Lilo is a small, neurotic chihuahua. She's not aggressive or mean like the chihuahuas you see in memes, but she's a very nervous and jumpy dog all the same. So as I step out of my apartment with Lilo, the mom and her kid come down the stairs at the same time. They spot Lilo, and without really saying hello to me, or greeting me or anything, they instantly dove down on her and started petting her, and talked between each other about how cute she is. Lilo was very nervous and confused at these 2 strangers suddenly cooing on her. I didn't dare say anything, because I have really bad social anxiety. Then they just left, again without saying anything to me. I don't have any more interactions with her until a few more months later, when I hear a ring at my door. My dog starts freaking out and barking, and I go to check the door, but there's no one there. What I do hear though, is giggling as 2 kids dash upstairs. I don't care too much about it and instead go back to my computer. Couple of minutes more, it happens again. Then again. After the 3rd time, I decide to go upstairs. By this point, it's far past 4 p.m., and again I hear them dash upstairs every single time, so I know for a fact it's the kids that live above me, and I'm frankly getting overstimulated and upset by this. So I knock at the door, and the daughter answers. I tell them as politely as possible that I know it's them running down to ring at my doorbell, and I beg them to stop because my dog will only get more anxious. She tells me that they haven't done anything, and I don't want to press it, so I just tell them to not do it again before I go downstairs. The next day, the same thing happens. 2 rings before I decide enough is enough. I look up the mother's number, and I send her a polite but lengthy text about how I know her kids are ding-dong dashing me and both me and my dog get anxious because of it. She doesn't reply, and instead comes to knock at my door a few hours later when she gets home from work. Now, you know when you can just tell a parent is entitled? You look at them and instantly see the tight lips and the posture, and you already know you're about to get an ear lashing? Yeah. That's what I see when I open the door, and I instantly tighten up. Another thing you should know about me is that I'm terrible and horrified of confrontations, part of the social anxiety, I suppose. So I'm already pretty much shaking in my boots. This woman starts by telling me that she heard that I spoke with her children, in this very accusatory, harsh tone. I reply, explaining why and what I told them. She gets snarky immediately, and tells me that those weren't her kids. I explain to her that I heard them dashing upstairs, and that the doors were locked, so I know for a fact that it was them. She continues to tell me that her children would never do that, only to go back on her words later and say that she's had a conversation with them about just this, and told them to not do it again, which clearly means they have a history of this exact thing. I just tell her again that I know it's them, and all I wanted was for her to talk to her kids about this issue because it's really bothering me. She gets angry, and tells me that it wasn't them and that her children are perfect and kind. And also when I texted her, her one kid was in the shower, so it couldn't possibly be them. Like she doesn't have 2 kids, and it didn't happen the day before either. At this point, my anxiety is through the roof and I feel like I'm about to have a panic attack, so I just tell her fine. I know it was them, but I'm not going to argue. And so she scowls at me and stomps up the stairs. The ding-dong dashing hasn't happened since, but her glares and attitude has gotten 100 times worse. She will look at me like I shot her damn dog every time she so much as sees me. Story: I don't want to accept my father anymore. Recently I have a fallout with my dad that led to me staying by my grandparents. In short, he became drunk and started to confront me when I said that I don't want to listen to his music. He listened it so loud that I could hear it clearly in my room, which is 2 rooms further away from where he is listening, and yes, my door is closed. In general, it is also thanks to his music that I don't like Vietnamese and refuse to learn it. Both of my parents are Vietnamese. In the past, he has his damn bass near the wall to our neighbor. Therefore, whenever he started to listen to his music, our neighbor started to banging on our door. Sadly, I am the only one that could hear it as my sister is too nearby the music, and my mother doesn't hear that well, so I am mostly the one who opened it and received our angry neighbor. My mother and my sister don't like the music as well. I don't particularly blame my neighbor, as I understand that he is rightfully frustrated over it, but the situation didn't improve when my father adamantly refused to confront him. I mostly had to pull him over, and it ended that he just screamed at our neighbor and slammed the door, and then it repeated until we could tell him to stop hearing his music. This occurred in the past many times. I am also the one who has to confront our neighbor most of the time, until my father accepted that we moved his places somewhere else, but that was more than enough to make me hate Vietnamese music to the point that my mood hit rock bottom when I hear it. I tried to let him listen to it a bit, but it only soured my mood more, and he never held on his promise to shut it after his proclaimed last song. One of the following will occur when he said that he will only listen to his last song. He will continue to listen and ignores his promise. He will restart the video in the hopes that we are too stupid to recognize it. He says he can't stop it as YouTube continue with autoplay. I know that it isn't nice to forbid him of doing STH. But if he can't learn to control himself, I have to do it. In his life, he only cared for himself and never questioned if his family is happy or not, and that only leads to me, my sister and my mother suffering under it. For example, we were on vacation in Vietnam and we were on an inflatable that was currently towed by a motorboat at high speed. As it was connected wrongly on the boat, the inflatable will tilt by every turn the boat makes. As we fall into the sea, we all have life vest on. It shouldn't have been a problem. There were also some wooden island near us. I fell on my chest and had trouble breathing as I float. My father was in panic as he wasn't a good swimmer and then pressed me down to rescue himself. I actually don't know what I should say to that. We both had life vest on, and how could you press your own son down to rescue yourself? This is one of the more severe story, but there are many others. He isn't better with his family like with my grandmother, his mother. There was a time where she was addicted to her sleep medication and she wanted to go to the ER even though she had nothing. It is way better now. My relatives didn't want to risk it and brought her there. Okay, to be more accurate, I brought her there as most of my relatives didn't live near her or are busy with anything else. They mostly called me and asked me if I could bring her there, and I am fine with it as I have time, and if it is an emergency I am more than willing to help. But one time when I was at home, my father joked about the fact that I will probably bring my grandmother to the ER while he doesn't have to do anything and doesn't need to care. Small reminder, this is still his mother. He also said that while I was in the same room. I started to question my kindness to other after this, but decided to stick to it at the end. When he is retired, he also expect me to take care of him, like paying him. Yeah, he can completely forget that the only thing I will pay is the money he has given me while raising me. Afterward, I will break contact with him. I know that probably most of the people here say that I don't have to pay him, but I see it in another way. As I don't accept him as my father, I see it in a way that I borrowed his money and just pays him back. After I got a job, I am currently studying engineering to end our relationship. I will probably stay in contact with my relative, father sides, as I have a good relation with them, but I will not fold when they ask me to reconsider my decision about my father. My mother will probably also break contact with him as she only stays with him because of us, me and my sister, and when the time comes I will help her. My mother is probably the one who formed me as who I am today, and I am really thankful for her support and her teachings. Story: Mom saying I cannot yell at her. I promise this isn't what it sounds like. I just wanted to start off by saying I think I am a pretty good child, and my mom always tells me to. I am 18 and I help her by doing all the chores in the house. I understand she is a single mother carrying this family and working too. I go drive to get her groceries and food. I am going to a college soon and the tuition is completely paid, and she doesn't have to pay a cent out of her pocket. I really hope I have made her proud. I am always trying to be obedient, and when she gets mad I try to swallow it down and get over it. She asks me a lot of things that I sometimes don't agree with or don't want to do, like forcing me into certain clothes, and I do my very, very best to comply with it even if I don't want it. I do love her very much, and I love this family of 3 very, very much. Recently she has asked me to give her my university portal account login and password, to have full access to seeing my finances and refunds that get dispersed into my student account. She is also in a fit since I put the direct deposit from the school under my checking account instead of hers. I just thought I could be able to send the scholarship refund money to her. I hesitated to give this information to her because I wanted a little bit of privacy with my account. I wanted a little bit of independence with my future life and maybe managing my own finances in my own student account. I love my mom and I do admit I am still a very dependent child, but maybe having control over this one account would be nice. I wrote down my username and password, but I forgot an extra character that I use that covered all the site password requirements, like when they want a symbol or something. Anyways, long story short, she tried logging in and it didn't work. So I tried several other logins until it finally worked, and now she is blaming me, saying that I purposefully wrote down the wrong password because I didn't want her to see my finances. I wanted to keep the refund money to myself or something, not that I really had much left after paying for my housing, rent and stuff, and trying to manipulate her. I never yell at her, I always am obedient and highly respectful, even when I am mad, but every time she accuses me of lying it kind of sets off a trigger inside me. I did yell at her today and I cried and I got very emotional because this is just such a weird and absurd thing to accuse me of, that I don't want her to see my scholarship money or something, even though we went over the exact amount months ago, or that I want to hide things from her. Now she is telling me that I am not allowed to yell at her, that I must respect her, and I decided to talk back, saying that if she didn't want that, then she should not unreasonably accuse me of those things, and accept that I make mistakes. Now she is saying she can accuse me all she wants, and I'd better not yell at her, or in the future I would be yelling at her when she gets old. She is also afraid that I will be overly independent like my friends, and she is afraid they have influenced me. She is afraid I will not be one with my family. These are all her words. I always try to push down my emotions, and show her I am an obedient and respectful kid. But now I feel she has pushed a lot of my own boundaries, but puts it on me by saying I pushed hers by yelling at her. I feel like she feels like she can push all the boundaries she wants on me, but I cannot do the same back when I feel like she is overstepping. So I guess, am I wrong for yelling and getting mad? I will do my best not to yell ever again, but I just feel like the dam kind of opened here and I hate being accused of dishonesty. Story, I need advice, please help if you can. So, to premise, I, 25 trans dude, and my BF, 25 trans dude, last week we were going to visit his parents out on his stepfamily's land. They're the country but not from the south type of people, and my BF grew up in, as he said, the middle of nowhere. Thing is, my BF is very much what I'd like to call a punk cowboy. Very anarchist, very for the people, heart of gold, just a wonderful and lovely guy. He's told me how bad his parents can be when it comes to being racially ignorant, but I'd met them before, so I figured I could handle it since they'd never really been that bad. This time was different. My BF's parents came up from Florida, where they live, to visit. We decided to see them since my BF's pet rat had recently passed and we wanted to bury him up where my BF grew up. We were gonna camp out on his stepfamily's land before burying his rat. We didn't even make it to the tent. For some extra context on his stepdad, let's call him Bob, fake name. Bob peaked in high school and is a self-reported nice guy. He would be friends with girls to get them to date them, and then when they didn't, he verbatim go, "But I was such a nice guy." Do you see the problem here? Hi BF here, how does Bob not know? With Bob being like this, he's checked a lot of other bigotry boxes and he loves to talk down people he sees as weaker or lesser than him. He speaks as though he's one step ahead of you, puts words in your mouth, and will constantly strawman or character assassinate just to prove a non-existent point. His ego is much larger than his actual intellect, and it shows with how he pulled me into an argument about trans people in front of his trans stepson. Now, I'm black. I'm also ADHD, so I talk with my hands a lot, I gesture a ton. We'll come back to that later, it's relevant. Constantly, during the conversation, he kept interrupting me, assuming what I was about to say, making assumptions about my points or intentions, and constantly tried to talk over me to the point where I got frustrated with how many negative traits he was projecting onto me. He'd say things like, "Oh, so you think I'm stupid," after I'd tell him the reason why I was explaining my speech patterns is I've had people misunderstand my lack of tone for attitude. Again, autism. Like, "Sir, where in that sentence did I say you were stupid?" The entire time, when he saw that I was getting frustrated, he was smirking like he was winning some kind of game. The conversation continued and Bob finally pulled a microaggression as old as time. He got angry that I was shooting down some of his points and said that I was being aggressive just because I talk with my hands. I'm not going to go over microaggressions here, but if you don't know, do a Google search and specifically research the angry black woman trope. I clocked that and just said, without a beat, "That's racist," and boy howdy did they, stepdad and mom, clutch their pearls. They immediately denied it, even though they've been racist before, not in front of my face, have asked me weirdly personal questions, and after this current incident, managed to say even more racist BF here again. At one point my mom literally asked what is his ancestry. They truly have been treating me like 3 on 5 of a person, yet they've never heard of a compromise before. His stepdad told me to get out and I took a walk. I later found out that he was talking to both of us, especially since my BF had agreed with me out loud and had mentioned that he's thought that they've said and done racist things previously. It's been almost a week since then, and we had decided to bury Draco, the rat, near our apartment instead. Since the blow-up, his stepdad blocked my BF, behind his mom's back. She didn't know at first, and when he went to talk to his mom today, his stepdad ignored the fuck out of him. We just continue to laugh about this because he refuses to communicate like an adult. He plays high school girl games because he peaked in high school and has done nothing but abuse the stepchildren he can get away with abusing, and the thing he's done in the past to my BF and his brother always makes me broil with anger. Currently, my BF. He's healing and learning have a bit of self-worth for himself. His parents, especially stepdad, have always been terrible, but he's finally at a place where they hold no power over him anymore and he can set boundaries. I'm proud of him. Story: the 23rd anniversary of my first Karen. I originally posted this 3 years ago, on the 20th anniversary of my first Karen. But now my first Karen is old enough to drink, and I always love sharing this story. I hope you enjoy reading it. Today is the 23rd anniversary of my first encounter with, and victory against, a Karen. Today, July 4th, 2024, marks 248 years of independence for the United States. However, I remember it almost as much as the 23rd anniversary of my first encounter with, and victory against, a Karen in the workplace. Now, because it has been 20 years, some details will be spotty. My memory is quite good, but 2 decades is bound to make certain things fade. Picture it, the movie theater. July 4th, 2001. Only 2 months before the world changed forever. I, 17 am at the time of this event, now 40 am, have always been a major film buff, so to work in the middle of it was just the best scenario ever. Sure, sweeping popcorn and smuggled Taco Bell wrappers wasn't exactly heaven, but, they wouldn't pay you if it was 100% lollipops and rainbows. It was the busiest day I've had since I started working for the theater. Everything popular was playing. At one point 9 of the 18 auditoriums were completely sold out. I am already well known for my pleasant customer service demeanor, so I am enjoying the cushy assignment of tearing tickets at the podium and directing people to the right screen. Repetitive gig, but it kept me from endless runs up and down stadium stairs all night. Just smile, tear the ticket, and a chipper. This will be the first/second theater to the left. Enjoy the show. One of the duties across all positions in the theater was to be vigilant about keeping kids from getting into R-rated movies. Quite often kids would try to pull one over on us. The most common would be to buy tickets to another movie and then sneaking into the R-rated movie when nobody is looking. Whenever an especially popular R-rated movie was playing, we didn't play around. ID checks at the box office and the podium, along with an usher at the auditorium entrance to make sure the ticket matched the film. July 4th happened to be the opening day of one highly anticipated R-rated movie. It was a sequel to a comedy with a reputation of being quite risque throughout. Let's call it Terrifying Film Part 2. We had been pretty secure against young uns sneak attacks before, but today we had to be Fort Knox. Enter 2 boys, no older than 12. I almost wanted to confiscate the sodas to keep from stunting their growth. Both hand me tickets to, wait for it, Terrifying Film Part 2. Quite bold. I admire this approach. I ask the kids for ID. Of course, they don't have one. Sorry. No ID, no parent, no dice. They walk away and I think nothing of it. 10 minutes later, I hear the screech of what I would later know is the mating call of the Karen, demand us accommodate us, known for their distinctive haircut, dilated pupils, and lack of reasoning. Karen, my kids are going into this movie. Me, ma'am, because this film is rated R, anyone under 17 have to have the K. I'm watching another movie and then when that's over I'm gonna sit with them. I'm just dumbfounded. That's not how this works. The parent has to accompany the kid through the whole film. Even though this was indeed my first rodeo, I knew pointing that out would be as productive as baptizing a feral cat. So I take a different approach. Me, if you can show me your ticket as well, I'll let you all sit together. And here we go. You know how they say you always remember your first? Yep. Now this part 1 remember like it was 5 minutes ago. K. Get. Me. Your. Manager. I could feel the white-hot fury of 1,000 suns shooting from her eyes. I'm surprised the papers on my clipboard haven't burst into flames. I'm at the podium. I can't walk away. Usually the podium has a radio to page management in situations like this, but of course when I needed it the most, it had vanished. I'm unable to leave the podium, but I can't grab a manager either. I'm stuck. I try to explain, but this just makes her turn an even darker shade of crimson. Kay, this is freaking ridiculous. Karen stomps away. Well, as much as one can stomp in sandals. Quick breath of relief, apologies to a couple of lovely elderly ladies for having to witness that outburst, and then, Karen returns with manager. Manager tells me to let the kids through. Did Karen magically produce another ticket for terrifying film part II to corroborate her story? Did he ask for my side of the story? Did he remember policy? Take a wild hypothesis. Hell no. That was the day I learned surgical spine removal is a prerequisite for customer service management. Karen gives me that I got my way, you little peon look. Now, I don't like being overridden on policy. I hate when management knowingly bends the rules and making me look like an idiot in the process. But of course I don't necessarily want to shout WTF to my manager at the same time. After all, he holds my newfound employment in his hands. This is where I know I was in the wrong. I knew it when I did it. I knew 2 wrongs don't make a right, but gosh darn it, I was not going to let her win. I lied. I tell the manager that she called me a F***king idiot. Hey, it sounded close enough to her freaking ridiculous remark that if there were still any witnesses nearby, it can seem like that is indeed what she said. Manager's eyes light up. Maybe they accidentally left a piece of spine during that surgery. Manager pulls Karen and the kids back. Asks Karen if she cussed at me. I thought I'd seen Karen at full meltdown mode before. Nope. Not even DEFCON 3. Karen goes off. Alternating between incomprehensible sobs and hateful screams from the 7th circle of hell. That's the worst one, right? Kay, how dare you? How dare you, you little liar? He's lying. He was cussing at me. Me, ma'am, I don't talk like that to customers. Manager shuts me up. I admit, I should have kept my mouth shut and not fuel to the fire. However, I was hoping I could induce some sort of short circuit in Karen's head. I was so focused on checking Karen's hair for smoke that I did not notice her husband, in his dirty wife beater, until he jumped into the conversation. He claimed to be a big shot at a restaurant chain, big eater, maybe, and that he had the power to get me fired? Get everyone fired? Make sure my appetizers are served lukewarm at his company for the rest of eternity? Whatever. Husband is laying into me, and defending myself, Karen is about to burst some blood vessels, hers or the manager's, unknown. The lobby is being treated to some live theater while waiting for their concessions. Manager finally sends me to the break room because I'm not staying quiet and husband is about to punch my face in. As I make my way to safety, I see Karen speed walk back to the box office, crying, accompanied by the manager. Karen and her brood get full refunds. I did get reprimanded for talking back to the customers, but I still declare my first encounter with a Karen to be a rare victory. Oh, and the kicker? Karen and husband had tickets to another movie, a PG-13 film that started at the same time as terrifying film part II, but ended a full hour after it. She wasn't going to sit with them during that movie at any point. And that was the time I lost my Karenginity and started a lifetime of dodging entitlement. In the 2 decades since, I've accumulated enough wild Karen stories to fill a series of books. If you like this story, I can gladly regale you with more. Thank you. Story, I, a transom 17, feel like my mom doesn't want me to get better. I, transom 17, feel like my mom doesn't want me to get better. I had a therapist and other forms of help for some months, I gotten comfortable with my therapist enough to open up about everything that has ever happened to me, including my dad's and mom's abuse towards me, them letting friends and family hurt me, our old housing situations, and overall anything that has or was happening. I was able to be told that yes, it's likely I have autism, that they'd give me ADHD meds just in case. I was also told I'm schizo and I have tics randomly, and yeah, I'm depressed to a severe level. I developed an eating disorder, and I also have bad anxiety issues that helped calm a lot of me that I was afraid of. But my mom hated my therapist. That's because when my mom's ex Betty was living with us, she just recently ran away from my mom with her baby. My money would give me the baby while she went out with friends. Betty tried her best to make my mom stop, but she couldn't. Each argument ended with my mom laying hands on her and me getting in between them to help Betty. I told my therapist about this, and she saw me babysitting. She was concerned because I was a high-risk person, so she was obligated to call DCF. My mom hated her, but I convinced her to not change me. She was the first person to believe me from the beginning and try to help me. Now a week or so ago, I'm bad with time, sorry, my therapist had to call DCF again. This time it was about my eating. When her now ex-GF moved, my mom was put in charge of all the shopping and everything else. My therapist told me that I didn't have to be a parent to my siblings. I wasn't their parent. I didn't have to clean after them, so I stopped doing that. My mom hated that because she used to rely on me for everything, and I just gave that up for my own mental health. So in retaliation, she would take my siblings to the store without me. They'd go grocery shopping and never buy my safe foods. Safe foods are something I'm 100% going to eat. I have a habit of going days without eating, so we developed that plan. I might be fat, but I can't eat like I'm fat, lol. Then once I did want to eat, she's yell at me for eating their food. The fridge had either dinner stuff or snacks. If I touched a snack, I'd get yelled at. They never bought stuff for me to eat, and I felt like I was taking their food. So I stopped eating again. It went on for a month and some change, and then I told my therapist. I told her in tears how I haven't had an actual full meal in a couple of days. She saw that in my face. I was pale and tired, and she said my cheekbones were caving in. She said that she was sorry, but she had to call CPS again. I broke down because I knew if my mom knew, she'd be mad at me and never let me get more help. I was right, OFC. She took my therapist away, then my therapy manager. She made each therapy manager session all about her. I wasn't allowed to get a new therapist till SHE felt comfortable with them. She took my meds away and said, you don't need them, you need weed, it'll help everything. I don't understand why my shit always revolves around her. Like, am I crazy, or should my therapist and any other help I get be at my comfort, not hers? Why is it when I'm getting better and able to function normally, she fucks it up? Like she's acting as if I am selfish for wanting a therapist who actively helped me, who sat there and calmed me down and made plans with me. She hasn't even attended family therapy. She's busy. Am I wrong for thinking she doesn't want me better or something? Story: boomer mother lied to me about living conditions to get me to move back to my home state. So, there I was in Savannah. Beautiful city full of vibrant people. Sure, there's some crime, but nothing too bad. But I had a bad run of luck, and a bad string of roommates. Ups and downs. Fell in love for the first time in 10 years, and then everything went to shit. She wound up cheating on me and trying to move the new guy into our apartment. She wasn't on the lease, so I trust this new guy, and she went with him. Left behind all her stuff, which was depressing. Tried getting in another tenant, and he was worse than the last. Stole $300 from me, wound up finding out he was a crackhead. Worse than that, he was a pedophile, which I found out from his parole officer. So, unable to make rent, I vented to my mother. She says, come back to Florida, I've got a room set up for you in the main house, you'll have your own room, bed, you'll get to see your cat every day, she misses you. I figure at that point, fuck it, just as long as I'm not sent to the shack I was at last time. Welp, turns out that was exactly what happened. See, my mother is living with my aunt, who's a Jehovah's Witness. I was never a witness, but I was at one point a Christian until whatever passes for a god these days decided to murder my father. For some reason, not sure if it was that, or whatever, she tells me the day she comes up there, surprise surprise, I'm not welcome at my aunt's house. None of the shit she had told me to get me to come back was true. Little background on the shack: it has no insulation. It is unfinished. The doors do not lock. It's 2 minutes down the road from my uncle, who's a literal fucking Nazi in the very real sense, in that he said to me before that Hitler had a lot of good ideas. It is in the extremely rural part of the county. My uncle's a fucking turbo boomer with the mindset of rub some dirt on it. I came out of Savannah traumatized. My father had died in a horrific manner as the victim of nursing home neglect. I lost my car, lost the only relationship I had in years, and had to leave behind all my friends. All I needed was to be able to trust someone. But nope. You cannot trust boomers to keep their word. And here's the thing, she gets psychotically angry when I call her out for lying to me. Just shuts down and insists she didn't lie. Says they decided by committee that it would work out better this way. I am extremely depressed and isolated. I am at my wit's end and have no hope for the future. I should have stayed in a shelter up there and told my mother to pound sand. Story: you will decorate your apartment how I want it to be. My mother is a bit narcissistic. At first, she seemed completely normal. Until you know or live with her. That's why she can't seem to keep in touch with any of her friends or even her children. I haven't been in contact since 2023. After getting fed up with her self-righteousness and narcissism, I moved away when I was 19 to 20 years old, which was unusual because rent in the area had skyrocketed. I managed to get by with a roommate who had a high-paying job and also had his own job. She doesn't pay any of my living expenses. We do everything ourselves. Despite this, she has always tried to control every aspect of my life, and the fact that she continues to do so is why I choose to go no contact. I only realized it was an option through psychotherapy and a supportive group of friends several years later. Before that point, I listened to her and she could make me feel guilty about many things I didn't want to. When I moved, I tried to decorate my new apartment any way I saw fit. I have so many ideas. I immediately hung all the posters I had in my room in the hallway. The walls have a few cracks and I want to cover them up. We used red and blue pushpins. We still don't have a kitchen table, but we never eat at the table anyway. I wanted something really small so it wouldn't take up space or something multifunctional. We finally found a pool table that had a sturdy cover on top so we could put a vinyl cloth over it to protect the table from getting dirty. My dad really liked that idea. My mother, not really. She hated the way I decorated my new apartment. She thought it looked childish with fairy lights on the ceiling. My dad thought it looked like a bachelor apartment and had no problem with that. Must love my dad. She kept commenting on how I needed to take down the posters and buy paintings I didn't like or need. She kept telling me I needed to draw something, which I did, and frame it to hang in the hallway. Every time I visit or come home to get more stuff. It's the same conversation every time about how ugly she thinks my apartment is. She would never do it that way, she needs to come in and fix it. No adult would want it that way. She wants me to redecorate my entire apartment, which will cost hundreds of dollars hiring a painter or buying things I don't need from Goodwill. I tried to gently tell her that I liked the look of my apartment and that I was an adult who could make my own choices. We haven't moved all my stuff into the apartment yet. It's horrible how she makes so many mean comments about how I have no taste. I need to tear everything down and start again. Her house looks so much better. Most of the time I ignored it. I was so used to her hating everything about what I did. Then she stopped making those comments and started taking me to garage sales in hopes of finding something I needed. Of course, it was a plot of her own. She found a kitchen table and chairs that she loved. I don't want them. I'm looking for a billiard table. She bought them all, and when Dad said she wouldn't throw away his kitchen table, she gave them to me. I was raised to always accept the gifts she gave me, otherwise she would get mad. She would make it her mission to make me feel guilty and the worst person in the world if I showed any dislike for her gifts. There were times when she returned some of my Christmas gifts because I didn't have the right reaction to them. If I hadn't flashed a big smile and enthusiastically thanked her for what she gave, the gift would have disappeared from my pile and I would never have seen it again. There were times when she told my siblings to steal it from me and that I would never have the chance to wear that shirt and play with the toys. Just because I didn't show gratitude forever or show enough gratitude for her to have any self-respect. She thought she had the right to control my reaction when she gave me a gift. Other times, she thinks she's entitled to other people's gifts and steals gifts from me, my dad, or my siblings because she thinks she looks better wearing them or just plain simply want them. I was never allowed to own a game console because she believed I would spend less time with her. In fact, I've found other ways to spend time with her that aren't technology-based. She just didn't want to give me something I could use to ignore her. I ended up saving every bit of my birthday money to buy myself a laptop when I was 16 years old. There was no help from my mother because she often told people at my birthday party not to give money. Story, my father literally told me to KMS and saw nothing wrong with it. It happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was at my father's apartment and we were drinking tea together. At that time, I had just passed the exam and was under a lot of pressure. I had insomnia, anxiety, panic attacks, and my bipolar disorder was worse than ever. I am recovering and trying to take small steps out of this terrible mental state. So, when the subject of the exam naturally came up, I told him all about it but didn't go into much detail. When he asked why I couldn't forget and move on, I tried to explain that it was complicated and related to PTSD. I had traumatic experiences related to exams from the previous university I dropped out, and how psychology works. He still didn't understand and said I was just overreacting and making excuses out of laziness. I again tried to explain in detail what was really happening to me by giving examples from the past, including suicidal thoughts. His answer was, then commit suicide if you can't live with your mental problems in society, and then he just talked about how in his time there were no mental problems. Mental problems and everyone is happy, but modern children are very weak. Back then, I just tried to brush it off and change the subject, and an hour later left on relatively good terms. However, when I returned home, I realized how bad the whole situation was and it seriously affected me for the next 3 days. I actually thought about suicide and had to work really hard to resist the thought and find reasons not to do it even though I knew I would be much happier once I was dead. A few days later, I got over the situation and decided not to talk to my biological father anymore unless he apologized. I went to that apartment to meet my stepmother and show her some great new English books I had ordered so she could use for her classes. She is an English teacher and I live in a non-English speaking country. I thought my biological father wasn't home so I felt comfortable coming, but unfortunately, he was there. I decided not to stay silent and directly explained the situation. He was really surprised to hear me upset about it and replied that he was just speaking his mind and that I was too soft and easily offended. That made me really angry, but I tried to stay calm and once again explained that such things should not be said to someone with a history of suicide. He was really surprised and asked, "Any history of suicide?" That was the last straw for me because he was the one who sent me to the mental hospital after my suicide attempt 3 years ago, and he knew about my recent suicide attempt last August because the incident involved the police and a neighbor alerted him. I got angry and said I was tired of pretending he was a good father, that I didn't want to hear his stupid comments about my mental health anymore, that I knew him didn't care about me, and that he was no better than my biological mother. She was religiously obsessed and I had cut off most contact with her. My stepmother also heard all of that, and although she did not directly object to my biological father, her husband, not making the situation worse, she did show her support to me and said that she actually agreed with some of what I said. My dad was completely taken aback and once again said that he was just speaking his mind publicly and he didn't see anything to apologize for. I replied that in that case I didn't see any way to continue talking to him, started ignoring him and left 15 minutes after I finished with my stepmother. I have not been in contact with my biological father since then, and I am thinking of cutting off all contact with him. I know I can try to talk politely and try to get him to apologize, but what's the point if he clearly doesn't want to and can't understand me? I really think that if I asked him what my favorite color is, what my hobbies are, who my favorite singer is, he wouldn't be able to answer these questions because he mostly liked never caring about my life outside of school, work, and my mental health. It would be hard for me to not contact him because I would essentially have to admit to myself that I never had loving and caring parents in the first place, and that would be a very painful thing, although in terms of objectively, I knew it was true. Story, entitled Father Says I'm Playing Victim Because I Don't Want to Live in the State as Him at All Times. This is a recent and more short story. I 18, female, and my father 44-45-ish, male, do not have a great relationship. I grew up in a very abusive household. I am currently working on leaving, but my dad knows I am very distant with him. Typically we do not get along, but today he was being nicer than usual, so we were talking casually. Somehow retiring and beaches got brought up. My father happens to be obsessed with the ocean and beaches. He has told me he would love to retire on one, so I ask him, don't you plan to retire on a beach? If I can, but I don't know how possible that is. I do intend to move, but if I do I'll take you with me, of course. Where do you plan to go? I don't know, somewhere hot. I'd love to be somewhere cold. Now saying I like the cold was a mistake. He immediately starts ranting about how he hates the cold, how surely I don't, how I would change my mind if I lived on a beach, how while places like Puerto Rico is hot, Hawaii is a nice temperature, just warm enough, and has beaches everywhere. It's just too expensive. I just calmly say I don't like the heat or beaches, I prefer the cold. This was my second mistake. Eventually we get to the car, and the topic get changed until he eventually asks me, do you plan to stay here or move? No, I'd like to move somewhere else that's cold. Why? I don't like it here. Why? So I started naming a bunch of different reasons. Eventually I make my third and final mistake and lightly mention part of the reason I want to move is because everything here reminds me of my brother. My brother is a heavy drug user who's in and out of jail, and when he lived with me and my father he used to heavily psychically harm me, and if I said anything I was punished for snitching. He starts going on a full-on rant about how I'm playing victim, how if everyone felt sorry for themselves like I did then no one would have a job, I go to work more than he does, and that I just want everyone to feel bad for me, how where I live isn't a bad place, it's rapid with drug abuse and crime, it's just shit and conservative leaning, so he likes it for those reasons. He started going on and on about how I'm lazy, and I want everyone to feel sorry for me, and how I didn't even really experience the worst of my brother, and how I just want to be special, and how he has real trauma from my brother unlike me. For context, I have had many different medical professionals confirm I have PTSD. Ever since he learned this, he has been trying to one-up my trauma, even lies about being diagnosed with PTSD so he can pretend he has the authority on what PTSD is. He was never diagnosed. He refuses to even see a mental health professional and thinks they are all a government conspiracy. I wouldn't be shocked if he has it, but my issue is with the fact he lies to feel better than me. I'm sure he said stuff about how ugly my body is and how I'm a shallow person who just wants everyone to pity me and buy me thing too, but sadly this is just the average day near my dad. Hope someone finds my story funny. Bye and see you again in the next videos and stories.